Libra is an air sign, and it's cardinal, ruled by Venus. If we start with these basic things, we can learn a huge amount. We don't have to remember everything that various commentators have said to us about Libra. We can work it out, actually. It's an air sign. It's mind. It's social. It likes ideas. It likes communicating. It likes relating. It's Venus, rulership of Venus. Quite different from the way in which Taurus expresses its Venus rulership. Libra's Venus energies are seeking harmony. I want this, you want that. Let's find the midpoint. Let's see if we can find a way for both of us to get what we want. And Libra doesn't really conflict. It really tries to avoid that. It's a great diplomat. And it's cardinal. It takes the initiative. It contemplates what the other person is wanting. And this actually works in the context of the military engagement as well. The most popular sun sign for generals in the army is Libra. And we think about its association with the word peace when we contemplate that. It's food for thought, isn't it? Now, Rudyard's two main studies of Libra, the first half, transfiguration, and the second half is more to do with reconstruction, a sense of recreating our awareness, reconstruction. So transfiguration, this is all about changing how we figure things, changing the model we have. And if we think about the first half of the zodiac, that started with Aries and finished with Virgo, and we have an expansion of awareness of self. Aries begins with I am, Taurus, I have, Gemini, I think, and so on. Cancer, I belong, Leo, I create, Virgo, I serve. So you've got self expressing itself in a more and more and more social way until we come to the second half of the zodiac. And here we have Libra beginning this. And it wants to change its whole scope of thinking, its way of approaching consciousness. It wants to return now. The first half of the zodiac is going out. The first point of the autumn equinox, we turn around. Things become darker now. Light has been the governing force of our reality for the last 6 months, and now darkness begins to take over. So we have to work things out differently. And we begin with Libra 1. The first expression of Libra is begun with this first degree of Libra. So learning is the first expression of Libra. And the butterfly with the pin in it, it's an attempt to hold on to beauty. And although we can't do that, of course, unless it's dead, the butterfly, what we can actually do is to hold on to the idealization of beauty. So we create this image of perfection and we seek to become it. Now this is the central mystery of Libra. They seek to perfect every situation, which means they live in the constant awareness of imperfection. Quite a big deal, that, which kind of partly why they're associated with indecision. They're not indecisive, I don't think. They really weigh things up until there's a clear reason why. You know, they reason things out, and it seems indecisive to other less thinking, more spontaneous, rash kind of people. But Libra is decisive enough. They make better decisions having waited until the time has come. Now, Libra 2 follows up this idea of an idealized version of what reality could be, and actually contrasts that with the idea that we're never going to reach that sense of perfection. We need to go through our own transformation all the time, transforming. And even the species itself, the sixth race transmuted into the seventh. This is from a theosophists 100 years ago or so. They teach that the species, our human species, is moving through its own emotional process, and we're going to reach a higher level of consciousness collectively. Libra 2 therefore contrasts the idea of idealization being perfection in the first degree with the idea that we're always going to be improving. Now, to reconcile that, Libra 3 is the idea of new beginnings, all of the time, new beginnings. Whenever we finish a project by perfecting it, there's something new. And it's no good getting upset about that. That's constant. The dawn of a new day, Libra 3. We're always beginning again and again and again. This moment is a new moment. It's a very profound spiritual wisdom to live in the understanding that everything is new. The past does not dominate the future. It does not act as a tyrant over the present either, unless we give it that mind, unless we actually believe that our past should enslave us, or could enslave us, or does enslave us. If we have that belief, then we can't do this mystery of Libra 3. But Libra 3 teaches us that we shouldn't think that. The past has no control over us. Each moment is new. It's a new dawn every day. In Libra 4, a group around the campfire, we're aware that we can move into a greater consciousness of what's going on, what is the case, when in the presence of a group, in communion. Now, a group isn't always in communion. A group is just a group, sometimes a mess, different opinions all over the place. But if you actually go through a process of finding empathy, listening to each other deeply, having no judgment, no bad, no right, no good, no wrong, then you get into this state of group consciousness on a higher level, the communion. And the fifth degree we come to then is that the man teaching inner knowledge. So we have this sense of awakening occurs, having gone through that communion process within a group. Food for thought there. We can do a lot to improve ourselves and to awaken ourselves by ourselves, reading books, studying alone. However, until we get into the idea of a group consciousness, we don't really get the thrust to the higher levels. And then when we do, then we're back to our own inner sense of knowledge. So the group knowledge may or may not work for us. That's not really the point. The point is that the group process works for us. The group will take us to a higher level of inner knowledge. That's Libra 5. So that's the expression of learning. That's how we learn stuff. Now, the second expression of Libra, reflection, is when we give thought to what we've just learned. We reflect upon it. And we understand that reflection, that word, is ambiguous somewhat. We can internalize our sense of the outer reality and reflect upon it. But we can equally understand that the outer reality is a reflection of what we have inside. And we crystallize our ideals in manifested form. So that's Libra 6. And Libra 7, the woman feeding chickens, this is where we understand that we've got to protect ourselves from what will come. It's a dangerous world we're living in, and it's our ideas, they would differ from other people's, and that's very often a cause for attack. Argument, in a sense, if it gets a bit vitriolic, is an attack. We don't want the dark arrows of somebody sharply disagreeing with us when it's important to them. We just don't want that. So that's Libra 7. Now Libra 8, the blazing fireplace in a deserted home. This gives us the idea of receiving support. The attack that we could go through, that we've got to guard against, is a real danger, and we need to be supported in that. The blazing fireplace in a deserted home. When we come home, there's something there. It's our sense of nurture doesn't leave us just when we go out and about in the world. We come home to it. And that development of not only the room with the fire in it, but also the people that are sitting by the fire, our family, we remember that there's a group of people who actually agree with us, despite being in the world, which is very often a place of great disagreement. And so we're reflecting on our differences between what we know, what we think, and what the world thinks. So there will be that difference, necessarily. In Libra 9, the Three Old Masters, this is a principle of transmission, like the old way of knowing things is real for us. Some of it continues. We must learn what the old masters knew. These guides that were there in the past, they passed down knowledge. So we take into account their wisdom in guiding us to live our lives well. This is a process of reflecting on old wisdom. And then Libra 10, poise and calm reflection. The canoe approaches safety after having been in danger. We once again regain our sense of balance, having gone out into the world and come back in our opinions and just find a centered sense of self, calm serenity of being. Now, the third expression of Libra, light-heartedness. This is beginning with teaching, a professor looking over his glasses. We have the functionality of passing the old knowledge that we've learned, the revised knowledge, the new understandings that we've got. We've been involved in social interaction and studying all these kind of airy things that Libra likes to do, just to consider everything, consider this point of view and that point of view. That's what we're doing here, learning, reflecting. Now we come to a lightness of heart, very Venus-like, isn't it? And we begin with this idea of teaching. So it's inevitable when we know things, we're going to teach things. That's what happens. Whether we're a teacher or just telling friends what we know, we're going to have a role of being a teacher. And that's something to engage with, not only on the level of information and understanding, but also on the level of tone. So Libra expresses the tone of gentleness of being and a sense of tact and diplomacy and calming things down. However, they've also got this sense of questing for knowledge, looking. They're cardinal sign. They go out of their way to look for knowledge, and the miner's going into the earth to finding out what's inside, what's underneath the surface of things, represents that principle of questing for knowledge. Now, the 13th degree of Libra, the children blowing soap bubbles, it's playful, isn't it? It's another way of learning. We probably learn as much through play as we do through work, probably more. And there is this lightness of being with the soap bubbles that Libra has. They can be silly and shallow, and they can be just light, lighten things, lighten the mood. It's not a heavy, intense sign. It's an airy sign, light, and that's the soap bubbles image. So 14 Libra, the noon siesta, the reasonable balance that is to be found between working on the one hand and resting on the other hand, keeping in terms of the rhythm of life. Now you rest, now you work. That sense of just balancing things dynamically. And then you get to the 15th degree, the circular paths, when it's understood that there is that rhythm of life. Things come and they go. The seasons come and go, and they go around in their circles. And there is wisdom within that. The cycles of life have their own wisdom. So this is the 15 first degrees of Libra, and they represent that principle of transfiguration. We learn, we reflect, we teach, we find balance, we rest, we play. It's a formula for living which changes who we are from being a sense of a potential self towards being a realized self. And that's the transfiguration. And so with this new awareness, we try to reconstruct things, and we move into the second half of Libra. Starting with Libra 16, the boat landing washed away. You know, you can't really change much if you hang on to the old. And anyway, nature comes along and blows the old away. You'll have some death to deal with in your life, some loss, some change of political circumstances and financial circumstances. It's bound to happen. Life gives us that. So that's Libra 16, the boat landing washed away. And the retired sea captain, Libra 17, he's seen it all. He's seen all the comings and goings, the difficulties, and it's just like, wow, you know, why struggle over much? You struggle for a while to learn what you need to learn, but then the struggle finishes at some point, and you can see that at the end of your life, or at the end of the day, or at the end of a project. But we come to the end of our struggles now and again, and like, give up, let it go. You know, we have endings, and we have to accept that. And that's a part of the wisdom of any project, is to accept that it's ended. Whether that's a success or a failure becomes irrelevant the longer we wait until we measure it. If you wait an hour, you might have interest in whether it's successful or failure. But if you wait a week, maybe not. A year, maybe not. 10 years, no. 100 years, certainly not. Yet it depends on time, and that's your focus of attention. However, Libra 18 points out that there are consequences to all that we do. This is karma, two men placed under arrest. It's whatever we do, we're going to pay the price for that, and we're going to reap the rewards of that too. There's no free lunch. It doesn't exist. You know, everything we do, everything we say is recorded, and it eventually comes back. So that's one reason to do good things, because you're going to get the implications of whatever you do. Libra 19, the gang of robbers in hiding. These are obviously antisocial members hiding away from mainstream power, and yet that's how change occurs. You know, even though right now the law is against them, it can turn around, because it's a gang of robbers. It's a group descent. These robbers may be funding a political movement to overthrow a corrupt government, but they're called criminals because the people in power want them to be marginalized. And yet all the good people of today were once considered bad people by the previous power possessors. It's the nature of things. So we must not really be too judgmental about who is good and who is bad. See things from different points of view, both points of view. That's a Libra mystery, isn't it? The Jewish rabbi in Libra 20 is holding on to tradition. It's very tempting for us to be modern, to renew our sense of what is real and wise, moment by moment, year by year, be up to date and modern in our understandings. That's a good point, but there's another point which argues against that, and that is there's always been a way of doing this. This is the way we do it, traditionally. And unless there's a good reason to throw out our traditions, we don't throw them out. We study them at least, so that whatever we're doing now is in contrast to what has worked for generations. We take it into account. That's a reasonable thing to do, and a well-balanced thing to do. So this bunch of 5 degrees of Libra, the first expression of the second half, is to do with getting a sense of modesty, just recognizing that there are other ways that different to our ways, and backing off a bit, loosening our grasp on the the ego that was so important for the first 6 signs. We're trying to soften that ego. And in the second expression of this second half of Libra, the reconstruction, we develop charm. We try and present ourselves without bombast, without arrogance. We try and soften the ego expression of self into the world. A crowd on a beach in Libra 21 indicates how insignificant we are from one perspective. We would not be noticed on a beach. And that helps us maintain this sense of modesty that we've found and be more self-reflective in the expression of our charm. A child giving birds a drink. This is the idea of being helpful. And that's a part of the modesty and the expression of charm, isn't it? It's helping people out, being willing to put your own interests aside to support somebody else. And we come to understand in Libra 23, the rooster presents this principle, that when we do understand things differently, we should speak about it. We should announce that there is something changing and it's important for everyone, and have the courage of our convictions and speak of it. And in Libra 24, the third wing on the left side of the butterfly, this sense of mutation. Things are changing, and things that were once this become something quite different. And we come to Libra 25, the information in the autumn leaf. We see that things are not as they seem. The autumn leaf is not death and dying and becoming useless as it may appear. It's much more than that. It's the compost of the future, and it's stunningly beautiful, and it's a part of the whole cycle. It implies what went before and what comes after. And we learn to see things through the illusion. We learn that everything has its own charm. We find that the idea that things are beautiful and other things are not, that may need to be questioned. Everything has its own beauty. And finally, we come to a level of understanding, because we've gone through a process of self-reflection, seeing things from the other point of view, seeing who we are through somebody else's eyes perhaps, teaching what we know, but also learning a different way of seeing things. So we come to the final expression of Libra in understanding. And the 26th degree of Libra is this sense of an eagle and a white dove turning into one another. I could be an eagle, I could be a dove, I could be this, I could be that. I've actually risen above both, so I can master both. I have the facility of choice. Now, if you're attached to one point of view or one line of behavior or one preference, you don't have that choice. So therefore you have not the mastery. However good you are at something, unless you're actually good at the other thing, you haven't mastered that one thing. You have to be able to do two things to be mastery of both of them. And that's inherent within the balance indicated by Libra. And in Libra 27, we get the sense of being above it all, being able to see both sides of everything, an aeroplane hovering overhead, having that spiritual perspective, having that ability to not be involved in the eagle or the dove. Neither is more than the other. Each has its own time and place. And being able to see both of those comes out of the practice of trying both. Then we get to Libra 28, the man in the midst of brightening influences. So this is to do with the awakening of faith. Faith that we're a part of something much bigger. We're once again reminded of the beginning task that Libra has to eventually release the ego entirely in Pisces. So we're starting to let go of that sense of self being all important and just the influences in our lives are brightening. There's more light. The ego is actually quite shadowy, really, and brighteningly we move to a new definition of self as part of something big and wonderful. And in Libra 29, humanity seeking to bridge the span of knowledge, we have this principle of participation in the species evolution. We mentioned earlier that the species is going through a transformation from the 6th race to the 7th race in Libra 2. And here we come in Libra 29 to active participation in that. We're a part of that. Our perceptions, our opinions, our commentary that we announced with the rooster, we're not just spectating. We're not just saying, wow, I'm going to be a member of the audience when I see humanity awakening. That's not really it. What we're saying is, oh my goodness, I'm a part of this. I have to be different. I have to act differently, to think differently. I have to feel differently to be part of that evolutionary process. And if we don't do that, then we don't get to awaken. We must grasp it. We must claim our new consciousness, or it's not ours. And then in Libra 30, we came to this idea of the 3 mounds of knowledge on the philosopher's head, the wisdom of knowledge. And it could be debated what those 3 mounds come to represent. Very often, threeness is associated in our numerology as a spiritual question. And so you have the idea of taking the initiative, receiving feedback, and reconciling those 2 things. This is Hegel's thesis, antithesis, and synthesis principle. And it's pretty much present in all spiritual traditions, one way or another, called by different names. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva would be another example of the same principle, actually, and so on. So we have to understand that the proclamation of one point of view is always going to be received by a contrasting point of view. And we have to find some way to reconcile those 2 things. So, for example, truth can be hard, but love can be soft. Truth might lack compassion. Love might lack practicality or reasonableness. So wisdom is the reconciliation of those 2 principles. This is the philosopher who's thought it all through isn't really going to make any impact unless there's some heart-centered presentation of it. And this is the final understanding that I think Libra needs to reach, is that the airy side of it, the social side, the interest in information and so on and so forth, really has to deepen into a heart-centered appreciation of what Venus is in the compassionate sense, seeking harmony with another. That's the understanding of Libra.